Hello and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd and we're glad you've joined us for another hour of good gardening. Joining me on the panel tonight, we have our experts from Nebraska Extension and University Landscape Services. Insect questions go to our very own bee hotel architect, Tom Weisling.
What's up, Kim?
We have turf and weed specialist here, Bill Kreuzer.
Hello, Nebraska.
Rots and spots guy, Kevin Corris.
Hello, Backyard Farmers.
And all those hort questions, Jeff, go to Jeff Culbertson.
Good evening, America.
And we'd love to hear from you too. If you have a gardening question, our master gardeners are standing by to take your call. You can just dial 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 800-676-5446. We also take questions and pictures via email for a future show. That address is byf@unl.edu. Send us pictures, tell us where you're from, and also don't forget to follow us during the week on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, and Pinterest. Before we get to questions, you know, this is going to be really interesting because I see two of the same things in two different chairs.
Don't give it away, Kim.
Okay, go right ahead, Tom.
All right, first, I brought you a flower.
Oh,
That's for you.
So sweet.
So you're going asking, why does the bug guy, crazy bug guy, bring dandelions? Because it's a lot easier to hold than a bee. So I brought this to talk about the importance of dandelions for pollinators. Dandelions are a great early season flower. They're out there and they're numerous. Each little flower here may have 100 florets, and each floret has a lot of pollen, a lot of nectar. So they're a great thing to let go. Let the bees start foraging on them. You're going to get bumblebees, you're going to get solitary bees, you're going to get some butterflies on there, you may get some flies on there, all kinds of things will come and utilize the pollen. So raise the mower deck, back off the spray a little bit, try to build up bee population, and that'll help your garden out just down the road.
Excellent. All right, point counterpoint, or are you going to show us something different?
No,
Bill?
it's not a counterpoint. I mean, you guys have seen me on Backyard Farmer. You know that I don't get too excited about, you know, spray this, spray that. It's more about doing it right and trying to maintain your grass properly. But I did bring a dandelion today. That is, you know, flowered. You see the flowers. It's done its thing with a nice puffball phase. And this dandelion has been treated with a herbicide. And so I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about what our herbicides are actually doing. So the more we know about what they do, the safer we can use them, the safer we understand what's going on. So this herbicide was likely a three-way mix, and the main herbicide that kills the dandelion is 2,4-D. And so what is 2,4-D? 2,4-D really is synthetic hormone auxin. It's just naturally found in our plants, and it causes the plant to grow. So what we do is we put a really heavy dose of this 2,4-D on, and the dandelion actually grows itself to death. And that's why you see it getting all curly and crazy. It's just growing very vigorously to the point where it burns up all of its sugars and wants to die. And so that's why this is the second best time to treat a dandelion, is because it's just fun to flower. It's low on sugars, and you know, they make it grow very vigorously, low on sugars, and we try to starve it and kill it. So that's one thing you may be seeing this time of year. Another herbicide thing we're seeing is this kind of white appearance on some of these weeds. This is a grass treated with tenacity, a herbicide we talk about, you know, fairly often. And this herbicide is a little bit different because it prevents the grass from making the green pigments, plus all the other pigments we see that you don't think grasses have, like the reds and the yellows that we see in trees in the fall, and it causes the plant to die. But we need sequential applications of that to keep the pigments from being generated. So it's a little bit herbicide physiology I thought would be kind of interesting, because it's interesting to know, you know, how exactly is this toxic, how is it actually killing the plant?
Excellent, thank you, Bill. All right, Kevin, you have something that has been killed.
So this is the time of year where we start seeing a lot of tip blights in our junipers and our arborvitae and sometimes our yews, so our evergreen shrubs. And tip blights can be caused by several different species of fungi. But what you need to know as a homeowner, if you have an arborvitae or a juniper in your yard and you're seeing this tip dieback, is that you know, it may be caused by one of these fungi. If it is, what they like to do is take advantage of stressed trees. So if you have any kind of physical injury that occurred, maybe through hail damage or something like that, you might see a tip blight occur. Tip blights also occur if you have winter injury on your arborvitae or your junipers. And winter injury occurs, of course, when the plant's not getting enough water during the winter. So spring rolls around, the plant is stressed. These fungi, when they get enough water in the spring and the temperatures are right, infect the plant, and you see this tip dieback. So what you should do is wait till it's dry, and you can prune these out. You're going to need to prune them out if they're completely dead, not like the one that's on camera now, but this guy here you would prune out for sure. And do it when it's dry. Make sure you sanitize your pruning tools between each cut, and cut about 2 inches below where you see the dead material. And that should get rid of it. Make sure when you take those cuttings, you destroy that plant material, because it's loaded with fungi that can cause infection over again. So prune this out, get rid of it, do it when it's dry, and that should help you get a handle on this tip blight disease.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. All right, Jeff, some beautiful things.
Well, yeah, I guess I have 2 plants here. This one here that the flowers are kind of fading on me quickly, the one in my right hand here. So these are both native shrubs. The larger one here with the red flowers is red buckeye, which is native to Missouri, so close to here, and it does very well here. I have plants that are about 8 foot tall that I've had for a few years, so, and they're flowering pretty nice right now. But it's nice, just a little bit different. There's a lot of things. We're kind of in a in-between stage with flower. Certain things have already finished up, unlike the dandelions, which are just going. But with our trees and shrubs and perennials, there's kind of a gap right now. And then the other plant I have here is Eastern Wahoo. And this isn't too showy right now, but in a shrub, it's a little showier. And certainly what's nice about this is come fall, it has beautiful fall coloring with kind of orange, pinks, and reds. And then the fruit is also awfully bright and red. So anyway, 2 native plants here. And also I want to thank Tom on behalf of all the groundskeepers in this state. Right now where the dandelions are going crazy, we can say we're helping the pollinator. So I do appreciate that, and I know I speak for all of us that we appreciate your support.
Pollinator conservation. Yes, that's what it's all about.
Thanks, Jeff. Those are great. All right, you get the first question.
Awesome.
So the question here is, are there any sightings yet of pine sawfly larvae? And if so, what is the best control method? And I think there are a couple of images here, there's maybe a native one and maybe not, and these might have come from your very own Jim Kalish.
Those do look like Jim Kalish photographs.
Yep.
And we do have European sawflies, and they are actually imported, hence the name. They're I haven't really seen any, and I know they're getting harder and harder to find, because it seems like with the Scots pines disappearing with the pine wilt nematode, we're also losing some of the habitat. But they do go to other pines. They may go to ponderosa. They may go to, give me a name of another
Austrian.
pine. Austrian pine, thank
Okay.
you. So they will go to other pines. And they're really neat little insects. They're actually larvae. They're not, they look like caterpillars. So you'd think they're a moth larvae. They're actually not. They're a larvae of a really primitive wasp, and called sawflies. And they feed in groups, which is really neat too. And they do that, it's kind of a behavior that makes them a little bit more defensive. They move in unison. If something's threatening them, they may rear back, and when they're all moving together, they look bigger, a little bit scarier. Now, timing's about everything with this, because you want to try to get them off the tree before the tree starts to candle. So some of the best ways to get these off, they're really hard to see when they're tiny. You don't start to see them until they get a little bit bigger and they start causing damage. But once you notice them, one of the best ways to get rid of them is get like a garden hose or a radiator hose or something rather soft, but still rigid, and beat the jeebers out of the limb. Knock them all off, they go onto the ground, they have a really hard time crawling back up onto the plants. So they're at that point, they're susceptible to being eaten by birds, other insects, being parasitized, so they're really not going to get back onto the tree. Another thing may be to go in and with some water spray, knock them off the tree with that. And also you could try insecticidal soaps on it.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Tom. Okay, Bill, I believe we've already had one viewer in one location. Now we have another. This is actually rural Red Oak, Iowa.
Okay.
She wants to know what this is. She's got it in her garden and in her yard.
Yeah, I was walking the dogs today. I saw a bunch along the trail too. It's poison hemlock. We did have this in our first show this year. It has the name Poisons, really, because when cattle eat it, it's bad for them. It's a biennial, so it's going to have its rosette form in the first year, and then it's going to be a little bit taller. In the second year, you want to just pull that, bag it, throw it out. It does have a poisonous characteristic to it. We talked about, is it a danger to you when you're pulling it? And we didn't find anything, researching that a little bit. But we still recommend burning it or composting it. So just pull it and bag it and toss it out.
All right, thank you, Bill. Kevin, this is a Norfolk viewer, 20 blue spruces. And one of them is not doing so well. Some of the lower branches of some have croaked. Others are not healthy. He's done some pruning on this one, and then you've got this white globby stuff going on. He was told to go ahead and put Epsom salts in 5 gallons of water and spray the tree with that. What do you think this particular disease thing is?
Wow, it's hard to say because I've been getting a lot of spruce samples into the clinic expecting to find some of our needle cast diseases that cause our lower limbs to fall off like this viewer is seeing. And I haven't been seeing a lot of that. I would recommend that this viewer submit a sample to make sure that we know exactly what we're dealing with here, yes or no, if that fungus is around. But Rhizosphaera needle cast is the one that comes to mind, and it causes the needles to cast off. But it usually happens in the fall is when the needles come off. And again, I haven't been seeing a lot of it throughout the state in terms of the samples that have been sent to me. A lot of what's been going on with our spruce is directly connected to environmental conditions, and for whatever reason they are just not happy these last few years. So I'm not really sure what that treatment would do. I don't think Epsom salt is a great fungicide, and if it is indeed a fungus that's causing this. So I can't speak to the efficacy of that treatment, but what I would recommend doing is just making sure you know what you're battling first. If the fungus is there, great, then we can start managing that. But if it's not, continue to just provide good tree care. If you are watering your lawn with a sprinkler and you notice that the sprinkler is getting the foliage wet of those spruce trees, increased moisture inside that foliage can increase the likelihood of those fungal diseases. So if it's possible, try to avoid keeping those needles wet. If you can, just water the base, the trunk of the tree, and the roots, and hopefully it'll correct itself.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So Jeff, 2 different viewers, 2 different locations, 2 different trees with mulch questions.
Okay.
The first is a hackberry in North Platte. Cannot grow turf around it. She wonders whether she could cover it with a layer of mulch, how deep and how far off, or soil and perennials.
Okay.
And the second is, how does she keep mulch around this one? The wind blows it away, and she's wondering about an edging and whether that will harm the tree.
Okay. Well, in both cases, mulch is fine. In this second case here, my recommendation is we need to have a larger mulch ring around the tree, and that would help with the wind blowing the mulch around and that sort of thing. We want to bring that out. I would say these are both good-sized trees, and I know people don't like to have large mulch rings around their trees, but it looks like to me in both situations, I would be 4 feet at least away from the trunk of the tree and get that far out. Mulch it with a couple inches of mulch, 2 to 3 inches of mulch at the most at any one time, and let that break down. We want to be careful when using herbicides around the base of trees, especially contacting the bark and the roots and that sort of thing. We want to be careful with that, not overdo that. There can be some damage to the tree using herbicides, so watch that as well. As far as the edging, if you really need to edge, if you're out far enough, so if you even want to go out farther where you're not hitting roots, then you could do some edging, but again, you'd want to get quite a ways away from the tree, or use something like maybe large rocks or something decorative to help kind of hold it in that way.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, most of our garden produce and beautiful flowers depend on pollinators. These insects are in trouble. They need our help. The University of Nebraska is developing a program that promotes responsible pesticide usage and encouraging all of us to protect their habitat. To tell us more, here's Nebraska Extension educator Natalia Bjorklund.
Over 150 crops in the United States require pollination for seed production. Most pollination services is done by insects, but wind and other mammals like birds and bats also contribute. Most insect pollination in Nebraska is done by native bees, honeybees, beetles, moths, butterflies, as well as flies. There's been a lot of attention recently given to the decline in pollinators, and the causes for these declines are numerous. It includes habitat loss, overuse or improper use of pesticides, disease, as well as poor nutrition. By providing pollinator habitat, you're supplying these insects with the proper nutrition, including the pollen and nectar source that they need for food, as well as nesting habitats. Fortunately, at the University of Nebraska, we've created a program to help promote pollinators. The program is called the Nebraska Pollinator Habitat Certification Program. Any garden space can become certified, and this includes homeowners, garden space, business property, and even schools. Some of our certification recommendations would be to provide floral resources from a list of plants that we provide, anything to create nesting habitat, and since 70% of all native bees nest in the ground, that can be anything as simple as leaving a small space that has no turf or anything like that so that the bees can get into a nest easily. Water, shelter, both required necessities for different pollinators to survive in a habitat, and as well as different conservation practices such as rain barrels or composting your food scraps, decreasing pesticide use. All of those are good recommendations for creating a good quality pollinator habitat. As part of this certification program, we've provided the application on our website. By creating pollinator habitats, we're protecting these important insects and educating others about them.
I think it'll be neat to check out that program. We hope you will also, and make a commitment to become certified, protect those pollinators. Right up your alley, Tom.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Okay, you get the second picture. This is from Ashland, Nebraska, and this is growing on their bur oaks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are galls on this tree. Definitely.
Lots.
So, lots of galls. And I can attest that my bur oak is just loaded with little rough bullet galls, which I do see some of the smooth bullet galls on there. And galls are really interesting because they are created by insects, they're created by pathogens, things that are in the plant that cause an abnormal growth. It either causes cells to get bigger and bigger, or it causes more cells to be produced, and it grows around the organism. It can live in this nice little protected area and feed. So on that particular specimen, there was smooth bullet gall, but then there was another gall that almost looked like a rosette. It kind of looked to me similar to like ash flower gall, which is real spiky and all kinds of different things sticking out of it. For lack, I'm not a plant person, but I know Jim Kalish got a sample like that he actually cut open to look for the causal agent, because that's really what we need to do. If we can't recognize the gall, cut it open, because the first thought was areophyte mites, which causes these types of rosettes. And he pulled it open and looked, and he just could not see any signs that there were any areophyte mites in there, or we would also think it might be a gall wasp, and there's no sign of a gall wasp. So he's doing a little further investigation. Some literature review hasn't revealed anything, so he's going to sleuth it out. So it's going to be a mystery that we can look forward to hearing how it's solved.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. Okay, Bill. Speaking of Jim Kalish,
Yeah.
we'll put him on the spot on this one. He sent these pictures of a former garden area using clean wheat straw to lightly cover it, and now he's got wheat coming all over in his turf. He wants to know what's going to get rid of it.
Looks pretty clean. So the nice thing about wheat is it's not a turf grass, because it can't handle constant traffic and defoliation, which is the definition of what a turf grass is. So all you have to do is just aggressively mow it, and it's just not going to tolerate that mowing like our grasses will, and it will wither away and die. So it's not much. It will just kind of disappear naturally. But yeah, finding clean mulch is important. Wheat's not a big deal, but other weeds can be an issue. So you want to be careful when your mulch source.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. All right, peony questions, Kevin. This has actually come from a couple of different viewers. Started last summer before it was time for them to bloom. Brown around the edges, thought maybe somebody had sprayed. 40 shrubs. This year they came up and looked better. Now they're doing this already this year. So they've had these peonies for years and years and years. Any ideas?
Yeah, no, actually, not at all. I looked in some resources and through some resources looking for peony diseases, anything that would resemble what's going on, and there's just nothing out there. Plus, I believe that this is happening on a larger scale too, almost across the state. I really don't have a great answer. I would love to see a sample in the clinic to make sure that it isn't some kind of a nasty virus that we have going across the state. Given those symptoms, that would be my first inclination, is to think that it was some kind of a virus. But again, I haven't received any in the clinic. So from a picture alone, it's really hard to say. I wanted to say it was cold damage, but there's no consensus among the panel for that. So it may not be cold damage. I'd like to see how they develop throughout the year, if they grow out of it or not. Again, if that viewer is noticing this throughout the season, I encourage them to send in a sample. We can get to the bottom of it so we can develop a management plan.
Excellent, thanks, Kevin. This is a Shenandoah, Iowa viewer. And Jeff, she has a 3-year-old red wing, which we think is hot wings, Tatarian maple. The outside branches, as I think our viewers can see on the picture, are wanting to be kingpins.
Right.
What should she do?
Well, she could do some pruning on the tree. She can go in and carefully prune back some of the side branches. But we want to remember that this particular tree wants to be as wide as it is tall. So it is not an upright growing tree. It's not a narrow columnar tree. It is a nice, broad, small tree that will have great fall color. The hot wings, the seeds will be bright red and ornamental. So you planted a relatively short, wide tree, and it wants to do that. So it's kind of doing what it wants to do. You know, especially in Iowa, you may want to watch for it having some volunteers, so it may produce some seedlings. And you see that with a lot of maples anyway, but this might be one that may do that as well in your garden, so keep an eye on that.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, the whole state has been slammed with storms recently, but we're not going to let that stop us. Let's take a minute to visit the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we've had lots of rain, so everything's a little muddy, so we're kind of on hold in getting anything planted. However, if you can see, our asparagus is coming up from our crowns, so we're gonna come in and as soon as it's a little bit drier, backfill a little bit to help get those asparagus established. We also have a lot of our cool season plants that we started in the greenhouse this winter hardening off outside our greenhouse. So hopefully this weekend, if it dries up enough, we'll be able to get a lot of those into our raised beds and into our containers. Also, our rhubarb has started to flower, so we've just broken off those flowers and we're just going to start harvesting those stalks, so maybe a rhubarb pie. And as you can see, we have a visitor in our garden. A little robin has decided to move in with our bees in our solitary bee house. So join this robin and stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden for a visit.
We can't wait to see if that robin actually hatches that egg, and Tom needs to put our new bee hotel up so we have some things to work with. And with all the rain we got yesterday, there probably are a lot of other things that are going to be poking out of the ground once we get them in there to begin with. So kind of an interesting season for us. All right, Tom, this is a Bertrand viewer with lilac borers.
Lilac borers.
How does he or she get rid of them?
Lilac borers. Best way is to find the little knot. Stick a wire in there and homogenize it.
Yuck. Poke a hole.
Poke a hole.
Poke a hole. All right.
Poke a hole.
All right, perfect. That's way better than spraying with something.
Yes.
All right, Bill, this is a viewer who wants to completely renovate his lawn.
Okay.
Wants to know the best type of sod, amendments to help retain water before laying the sod, and he did do a soil test, which is great.
Okay.
So-
Yeah. Without seeing The soil test, I can just look at the interpretation and use that to figure out what we need to put down from a chemical standpoint. If you have a poor soil, I would consider, you can bring in some compost and help till that in. That can improve the soil. If the soil's pretty good, it was an existing lawn, it may already have a nice organic layer there, and so you could sod right on top of that. But make sure it's leveled off nicely first, and then keep it wet. But I think there's a misconception of how wet you have to keep sod. People overwater their sod. You just want it to, especially in this kind of weather, just keep it wet, but you don't have to be watering it for 20 minutes. There's no roots there, so watering a long time doesn't make much sense. You want to water more frequent and lightly.
All right, thank you, Bill. Kevin, we don't know where this viewer is from, but he or she speaks for many. All of a sudden, with the rain, toadstools all over the lawn. What to do?
So yeah, controlling what we call nuisance fungi in the lawn is difficult. There isn't any really great spray applications that we have, fungicides that you can just put down and be effective. That fungus is coming up because there's some organic matter in your lawn, maybe an old dead tree or root system or something that it's feeding off of and then sporulating. So short of removing that organic matter, which is sometimes very impractical, there's not a lot you can do other than just removing them if you find them unsightly.
A little voice in my ear said golf practice.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Practice your
Great
lawn
idea. Okay, Jeff, this is a viewer from a farm south of Claytonia. The red, delicious apples have produced heavy crops, but this year hardly any apples at all. They have been told the trees should be pruned heavily to balance the crop. When would they do this kind of pruning on the apples?
Well, with apples, you can do a summer pruning. You'd want to wait, I would want to wait at least 30 days, maybe longer than that. We want to make sure that we have 3 or 4 inches of growth. The growth is slowed down at that stage. And then you can go in and you can do some pruning. We want to get out our crossing branches, some of the branches that may not have been productive. I know this year that you're saying they're not very productive, but some of the branches that don't look very good, broken branches. We want to try to keep a semblance of a leader, and with apples that can be difficult sometimes, but we want to continue to try to maintain a strong leader. But you can do some of that pruning here in the summer and then just kind of keep an eye on it. I would say that trees don't always bear evenly year after year, so this may be for a variety of maybe climate reasons why we've just kind of had a drop in our harvest this year.
Welcome back to Backyard Farmer. Later on in the show, we'll be hearing about how Nebraska is one of the leading producers of dry edible beans. You can still phone in your questions by dialing 1-800-676-5446. While you're doing that, we will start the lightning round. Ready, Jeff?
I'm ready.
We have a question about whether dyed mulch is good or bad to use in the landscape.
It should not be either. It should be fine. The dye should be benign and it shouldn't have any effect on the plant. So.
All right. Why are you recommending, and this is a viewer who watched a couple weeks ago,
okay.
more fertilizer in beds with old breaking down mulch? Why are you saying apply more fertilizer?
Well, just to add some nitrogen to the soil there, because as that mulch decomposes, the microorganisms rob the nitrogen from the soil. So.
And any particular kind of fertilizer?
We want to stay away from high phosphorus fertilizer, so something more on the nitrogen end.
Okay, can fake log ashes be used in compost?
Fake log ashes. I would only use it in fake compost. Okay. No, I wouldn't use log ash on compost.
All right.
Yes.
A poor viewer in Tacoma had their rhubarb destroyed by hail, just shattered. What should she do?
I would just clean it up and make sure that you continue, sometimes with rhubarb we worry about root rot and that sort of thing, so make sure that it doesn't stay too wet.
All right, excellent. Nice job. Okay, Kevin, your first is a gimme based on your sample. Are you ready?
Oh, sure.
Is the window to spray pines for tip blight still open?
It is still open. It's about midway through, but you're still good. You can get some protection.
All right. Lots of viewers, especially in the East, are saying they have powdery mildew appearing on their chokecherry. Is there anything they should do about that?
You can actually spray that off with a soaker hose because it's powdery mildew and it doesn't, you spray it off with a soaker hose. Other than that, there's not a lot other than pruning the canopy to open it up and expose it to sunlight and air.
All right. You talked a little bit about a disease of lilacs last year that was kind of a problem. What was that and should we watch for that?
Yeah, we should. It was a bacterial disease, much like fire blight. Haven't seen a lot of fire blight. Haven't seen a lot of that wilt on lilacs either. But it looks a lot like fire blight. Turns the leaves black. Could be there.
All right. If shrooms are appearing around tree roots, do we suspect issues with the tree, or they're just having a good time?
Yep. Typically, mushrooms will fruit, produce their spores on trees that are injured or dying.
Okay. If botrytis shows up in peonies, is that spring or fall?
Botrytis is going to show up usually on the flowers. So whenever peonies flower, which is actually like midsummer.
Now,
Typically.
actually.
Nowish? Okay, nowish. She's the
Early this year.
So yeah, whenever they flower.
Yeah. Okay, you ready, Bill?
Let's do it.
In a lot of spots in the state, it's really too wet to mow. If they miss a mowing, should they raise their mowing height?
Yeah, raise the mowing height. Worst case, you would, bag it, but raise that height and try to get out there as soon as you can.
All right. A lot of viewers had already put their seed down, and can we expect those seedlings to freeze or not? Are they going to have to reseed probably?
If they haven't germinated yet, they're probably fine. The soils are still warm too, so that's going to help buffer that little freeze. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Okay. A viewer has creeping phlox and has grass all over in it, and also in other landscape beds.
Mm-hmm.
How does she control the grass?
You can pull it or use like grass be gone or something like that.
Okay. There are things on the market like a turf patch product or an easy turf kind of a product. Do we recommend using those?
You can use them, they're just very expensive. You could probably just buy some seed, do it yourself, incorporate that seed directly into the soil, maybe sprinkle some starter fertilizer. It's just going to be more expensive to get that patch product.
Okay. Controlling brome around trees and windbreak.
Controlling brome, tenacity works, Roundup works, kind of, for both, but you're not going to get great control either way.
Okay. In other words, let the trees grow.
Yeah, they'll
Okay.
shade it out.
You ready?
Bring it on.
Okay. I know you're a beer guy, Tom, so what controls slugs besides wasting a good beer?
Oh yeah, don't use only cheap beer for slug control. We get a lot of practice at that at a friend's house in Cedar Creek, but I
Lightning.
recommend snail bait. Sluggo is a good one. It contains an iron phosphate type of product.
Right. How about what is a herbicide control that can be used in the gravel drive that won't hurt the bees?
You can use any broad spectrum. I hate to recommend them, but they're not going to, Roundup's not going to hurt the bees.
Okay. How do you discourage earthworms or night crawlers in a lawn?
There's some different types of controls. I would recommend maybe trying a soap solution that's not going to harm the grass to drive them out. Mechanical control by maybe wearing lawn aeration sandals, inviting a lot of birds over.
Okay. This person had leafcutter bees in their roses last year. Can they expect the same thing to occur this year?
Sure, and that's actually a good thing. They need the leaf material to go make their nest. They're not going to cause any significant harm to the plant.
Excellent. They're fun to watch. Anyway. All right, Jeff. Gladys has brought us one of her more absolutely unusual plants.
This is very unusual. Kevin and I have been sitting down at the center of the table admiring it as a alien. I think you mentioned it being an alien plant. So this is what she calls the lifesaver plant. I assume because of the flowers here that look like someone just glued a lifesaver on the flower. But this is Hernia zebrina. So it's a succulent. She says it likes lots of light, a little water, not a lot of water, loose soil. She has it in a sunny window in her house. It's one of these, in the category of houseplants where you plant it and forget it sort of thing, and every once in a while you check on it and go, oh gosh, that's still alive. Maybe I'll pour some of my iced tea on it and keep it alive. So it's a tough plant, but it's very odd looking, so cool plant.
Very cool. And is it pokey or does it?
Well, it doesn't look like it, but then Kevin had something sticking in his finger, so it must have a little thorn. So I'm not going to hug it anyway.
All right. Thanks to Gladys for sharing something we actually have never seen on the show,
very
I don't
unusual.
believe. Very nice. All right, Tom, you get the next picture question, and it's kind of an interesting one. You get it because they commented on webbing.
Okay.
It is an Omaha viewer that has a Japanese lilac tree. The leaves currently have black tips. You get it because of the webbing, and then we can talk about what it probably really is.
A lot of puckering too going on in that. Really, it's kind of early for, with puckering like that, it could be a lot of things. And I know Kevin will talk about some of the diseases, but you would typically go to a leaf that's shaped like that, maybe flip it over and look to see if there's any evidence of feeding. One thing we might expect if you have webbing is possibly spider mites, but it's way too early for spider mites. My thoughts would be that there are probably spiders or spiderlings on that plant looking for something to eat, and they're leaving their webbing behind. As far as the black tips, my best guess is there's some frost damage going on there.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the consensus, wasn't it?
If it were the lilac wilt thingy that we were seeing, the entire leaf and stem would probably be black. So.
All righty, thanks guys. Bill, you get the next picture question.
Okay.
North of North Platte.
All right.
Yellow-brown patches in the front lawn on a ridge. They get slightly less brown later in the year, never really goes away. It's bluegrass on very sandy soil.
Yeah, to me, we do a lot of research on winter kill in Nebraska and the Gulf side. And I think that's probably what we're seeing here. You have a ridge, it's sandy soil, there's not a lot of water there. Maybe getting scalped a little bit as that mower goes over, so that grass is under a little bit more stress, and then it recovers slowly over the course of the summer as that bluegrass fills back in. So one thing I'd recommend would be maybe raise your mowing height a little bit so you're not scalping as much across that ridge. But secondly, into the fall, make sure that you have good soil moisture in that ridge. So if it is winter kill, it's able to handle that stress. If it happens every year, it might be something where in January on those hot, warm days, 60 degrees and dry and winds blowing, you go out and you water very lightly, like less than 1/10 of an inch of water. That's just enough to help keep those plants alive and help it to survive that winter kill.
Do you guys use the word syringing kind of for that?
Yeah, syringing is not exactly what definition would be, but it really is. You're not trying to water in the winter, you're trying to kind of rehydrate those crowns.
All right, thank you, Bill. This is actually a picture from last July, Kevin. Amber maple, they say they had not treated it for fire blight. Third year they have not treated for fire blight, and the tips of the branches seem dead, which almost looks like that tree lilac we just looked at, but this is a July picture.
Yeah.
So they're wondering if they should do something to treat it with the new foliage coming on now.
So it's a maple, and as far as I know, maples are not susceptible to neither fire blight nor this Pseudomonas that's attacking our lilacs. This looks like something entirely different. I'm not sure what it is. Preventatively, there's not a lot I would be able to recommend. I would just try to keep an eye on all those limbs where you're seeing those really black leaves and see if they re-leaf this year. If they re-leaf, then something must have just attacked those leaves and caused that really nasty, blackness that you're seeing last year. And again, hopefully it'll re-leaf out on those limbs and they didn't die back. And hopefully it was just some kind of an environmental stress that happened and you won't see it again this year. But based on those photos, it doesn't look like any known pathogen of maple that I know of.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Jeff, an Omaha viewer, Northwest Omaha, has the evergreen hollies, broadleaf evergreen hollies. 2 of 4 of them have died. It is a southern exposure. She wants to know what they can do to save the others.
Well, it's probably not sited the way we would normally want to site hollies. We don't want them in something where they're getting a lot of sun, that late day sun, especially in the heat of the day. So typically, if we were going to have hollies, we want them maybe an eastern exposure or northern exposure where they're not necessarily getting some of that heating during the day, or even during the winter time, a lot of sunlight, like Bill was talking about with the turf grass, same sort of deal there. Typically, the other issue with the hollies is, my guess is they were container grown, they were put in there, they would probably have some root issues as well. And I would wonder if you went up there to pull them, if you'd be able to pull the whole thing out and there wouldn't be a lot of root growth anyway. So that'd be kind of the other thing. I guess I'd consider maybe looking at something that would be better suited to a sunnier spot, something like a spirea, or anyway, there's a lot of plants they could choose from that would fit the bill.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, let's turn our attention to a little agriculture right now. Did you know that Nebraska is one of the leading producers of dry edible beans in the country? And that all happens in the Panhandle, where the conditions are perfect for growing beans. And because it's the International Year of the Pulse, which is another term for dry edible beans, we'd like to take a minute to focus on beans. Here's Jim Shield to tell us more.
Well, out in western Nebraska, especially in the Panhandle, we're a little bit different in our cropping systems because of our high elevation and our little bit different climate that we have in the west. We're able to grow a few crops that you don't see in the rest of Nebraska. Two of those, one being sugar beets and the other one being dry beans. And within a 60-mile radius of Scotts Bluff, over 80% of the U.S.'s great northern market class is grown in this region. So typically we don't get very much rain at all in the fall. So once we harvest them and those beans start to dry down, we can have some really nice looking beans. And that helps us in international markets. There's a lot of countries that like Nebraska great northern beans. You know, dry beans have been part of the cropping system here in the Panhandle for over 100 years. And they fit nice into our rotations out here because, one, they don't use a whole lot of water. Two, they're short season. We plant them the early part of June and we harvest them early September. And the other thing that really makes them fit out here is in the West, we tend to have a little bit more hail. And with indeterminate varieties, the beans can take a little bit of hail and they'll start growing again and still produce. So they really are a good fit for our cropping systems here in western Nebraska. The market classes that we commonly grow here in Nebraska are the Great Northerns. That would be number one. Pintos would be number two. Light red kidneys would be number three. And then there's a black bean and then a small red that probably make up the rest of the type of market classes that we grow in Nebraska. Typically what a home gardener's gonna grow for beans is snap beans, and they are a little bit different. If you let the snap bean grow, you know, and let it dry down, you will get a dry bean out of it, but they're developed so that they stay at a stage where you can pick them for a pretty extended period of time and that bean seed doesn't get really big and thick on you, because if you're eating a snap bean, you don't want a real beefy seed that's in that pod. But again, the texture and the quality is probably not as good as a true snap bean. So if you want snap beans, you probably should plant snap beans. If you want a dry bean, you probably should plant a dry bean variety.
And you probably thought Nebraska was just about corn and cows. So know that when you go to the store to pick up that musical fruit, most of those came from the Scotts Bluff area. Had to throw that in with the boy panel tonight.
That's quite a distance.
We could go like boys.
All right, we have picture number 4 for you, Tom.
Okay.
These are service berries. And what in the world are you seeing, other than probably some disease issues, Kevin? There's also little white flecky things.
White fluffy stuff.
Yeah.
Woolly aphid of some type.
Yeah.
Woolly aphids are really neat little critters. When they're small, they're nymphs, like right now. They're starting to produce waxy filaments, so you start to see this white. And they're just plump little things that are getting fatter and fatter and growing these filaments. So when they become an adult, these waxy filaments will be nice and long. They may grow wings, they may not. But what's really neat is if they do grow wings and they got this wax on them, they fly off. Looks like snow just coming off the plant. But the good news is they don't last very long and they're not really going to do much damage other than maybe a little bit of honeydew left behind, which will wash right off.
All right, I'll take you at your word because those are my service berries.
Oh.
All right, Bill, I think we have 4 or 5 questions about white on turf.
Yep.
This particular picture, I believe, is from Denton, various places, new seeded grass, old seeded grass. What is it and what do they do about it?
Yeah, I had it too. I was going to bring it today, but I got mowed off this week. That is powdery mildew. It's a pretty common disease. I say it loosely because it really doesn't cause too much of an issue to the growth of the turf grass plant. So it may look a little bit funny. It has this kind of a white, appearance to it. But it's not really hurting that plant, so I'm not too worried about it. It's generally more common in areas that are shady and wet. So if you can improve, try not to mow when it's wet, try to reduce the moisture. It's impossible this week, right? And then if you can do any pruning, that can help out too. But I wouldn't recommend any kind of sprays. It's just a natural occurrence, but it's not going to kill your grass, and it'll disappear when it dries up.
All right, thank you, Bill. Kevin, a Bellevue viewer, had a honey locust that got planted last year, and it has developed these pretty nasty whitish spots on the lower branches and also on the trunk.
Ooh.
Any causal agent and what to do?
That looks like a canker. It looks like hypoxylon canker or nectria. Either way, it's not good. It's either an annual or a perennial canker. If it keeps coming back in that area that's white, gets larger and larger, then obviously it's a perennial canker. Either way, on these limbs, these side limbs, you're going to need to prune them off and get rid of those limbs. If it's happening on the trunk, unfortunately, that tree may survive, it may not thrive, and it may just be a matter of time before you have to think about a replacement tree. But yeah, that really looked like a nasty, ugly canker, and if it's on the trunk, that's kind of a
Death knell.
Prune it at the base, right?
yes, prune to ground level, replace tree.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Fremont viewer, Jeff, silver maple, he thinks it started itself.
Oh, it's nice.
And then based on what we see,
Yeah.
what kinds of issues do we think we're going to have in the future with this tree?
I think we're going down a rocky road here. And I certainly understand, as someone who likes to collect seedlings and plant them in other places, I feel their pain. But I would say this would probably be an opportunity to go find themselves a nice tree with a nice trunk on it versus this kind of multi-stem thing that probably died back or got mowed off. I would guess that the guy mowing mowed it off a couple times till someone saved the seedling with some rock. So
In other words,
not a tree that I would want to keep.
all right, excellent. Thanks, Jeff. We have a whole pile of announcements tonight, I think, about fun things in the landscape world. The spring plant sale for the Hort Club goes on tomorrow as well. That's the first one. They have some great plants to sell. The second one is Finke Gardens has a 10 a.m. Conversation and presentation about new plants for 2016. There is a number on the screen for that one, so you can find out more information. The first Tuesday's walking tour of our own UNL Gardens, Tuesday, May 3rd, noon to 1 on East Campus with the website on the screen for our viewers. And finally, the Sunset Hills Garden Club plant sale, Saturday, May 7th, 8 to 3, William Street in Omaha. So fun stuff in the gardening world. All right, Tom, this is a Davie, Nebraska viewer. They have wasps in a barrel. How to keep them out or move them without killing them.
Oh,
Stores wire in the barrel and the wasps are under the lid.
wasp are under the lid.
Yeah.
It would help to know what kind of wasp, I guess, but I would guess it may be a paper wasp nest that's starting, and if you are willing to relocate them, I would recommend doing it in the evening when the wasps are fairly quiet and take them to a new location. You may also want to try to get a jar or something and lift the lid up and stick it, try to capture them in the jar and then carefully remove them. So if you want to move them, maybe take the whole lid away. Might be one of the best ways.
All right, sounds scary to me.
Yeah.
Bill from Fremont, Creeping Charlie, had it eradicated apparently for 4 years, and it's in their turf. It's now back. They want a permanent solution.
Okay. Well, if you had it eradicated and it's back, well, it probably wasn't eradicated, but it's probably a bad growing environment. It's not what we can really do now to control it. That one's a tough one to control. It's going to be a fall control product. So really try to take a step back and look at that site and think about, is this going to be, what am I doing to improve that turf grass? Because if it was eradicated and came back, then there probably is some underlying issue with the health of the turf that's allowing that weed to take over and be prosperous. So it's hard to say without really looking at the site.
All right, thank you, Bill. Kevin from Bennett, a newly planted 6-foot Honeycrisp apple, and wondering if they should put this new tree on the same spray program they use on their other apple trees, or is it too new?
Oh no, I don't think it's too new, and it's time right now to be treating our apples for cedar apple rust and even for apple scab too. So yeah, treat away.
Okay. Jeff, you have a really easy question, but it tests your memory.
Okay.
We have a viewer who wants to know, what were the names of the 2 samples you brought in?
Tonight?
Yes.
Oh, so, sorry. Red Buckeye and Eastern Wahoo. So
right.
Aeschylus pavia and Euonymus atropurpuris or something like that. You can say it better than me, but anyway.
That's showboating.
I know the scientific names.
As he should, as he should. Okay, Tom, an Ashland viewer, has lilacs covered with scale.
Ooh, scale insects. Scale insects are, you kind of want to keep an eye on them. If they get to be too numerous, they could be causing a little bit of damage, but soaps can sometimes take care of them. The thing about scales is there's an insect living underneath that waxy part, so you need to make sure that it's dead. It usually requires a couple applications to make sure you get the crawlers, and it can work in and get the insect underneath that scale.
All right, thank you very much. Quackgrass, Bill, in
Quackgrass.
Lincoln. How to control it? It is quacking its way over from the neighbor's yard.
Oh, that stinks. There was one herbicide that we could have used, and then they pulled the label because people were using it incorrectly and killing their lawns. And so there really isn't anything now for quackgrass, unfortunately. So it's going to be a Roundup. Can you do some kind of a buffer with a mulch bed or something so that as it pops up, you can try to knock it back? But that one is going to be a losing battle, unfortunately.
Okay. Kevin, you talked a little bit about the spruce diseases. There is a needle cast disease, is that correct? And it is time to spray for it, according to one of our good watchers from Omaha.
For the needlecast of spruce, yeah, it's when the candles get to be the measurement. Ooh, it's just gone out of my mind. But the new candles, when they're, I think it's a ½ inch long or an inch long, is when you want to start treating for rhizosphere and needlecast, and we're getting pretty close, I think, with our spruce. So yeah, it is.
I was looking at them today. They're about like that blue spruce are about 1.5 inches, 2 inches right now.
And it's a fungicide application, drench, or?
It is. It's a soaker, and again, the product. I don't know what the best efficacious product is out there right now. I would just contact your local tree care professional for that product, but it is a drench type of application.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thanks, Kevin. Mm-hmm. An Iowa viewer, interesting question without a picture. 2 crab apples, same size, one leafed out and the other one is not doing anything.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I know we've had a funky year, and I was walking both campuses this morning and this afternoon, and we do have certain trees that are still pushing buds. The wood is still green, a little thumbnail test, and that's what I would do with it. The one that obviously is leafing out, we're not worried about, but keep an eye on that. If there aren't buds formed or pushing on that crabapple, if we're not starting to see leaves starting to emerge, it could be that you just had some winter kill and the plant didn't make it over the winter.
All right, thank you, Jeff. We talked last week, Tom, about not being able to pollinate the peaches or the apricots because of no pollinators. Ever heard of pollinating without bees?
Yes, actually, you can be a bee. Take a paintbrush and go up and do the job of a bee. Maybe you could even try a little buzz pollination and just find a way to vibrate the flower to knock pollen down into those anthers. That's the right part, isn't it? Pollen anthers, yes.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. All right, excellent. Bill, we have about 15 or 20 seconds.
Okay.
Any need to apply iron or any other products like that to the lawn this time of year for any good reason?
Usually no. Iron issues usually are most prevalent in the summertime when the soils are hot and the roots aren't functioning to their potential. That said, I am seeing a little bit of iron yellowing going on right now. So if you see that yellowing, and maybe something, you can try some iron sulfate. It's, you can granule, just water it in, light rate, like an ounce per 1,000 square feet, and see if that helps green it up. If it doesn't, then no benefit, but generally in the middle of summer.